If you look at the map of South America, one country stands out immediately: Chile. It doesn't look like any of its neighbours. It's not a wide country or a square country or even remotely balanced. It's long, very long, and incredibly thin. At first, this might just seem interesting, like a geographical quirk, but behind that narrow ribbon of land lies a much deeper story. A story of war, geography, trade, and even survival. Because Chile's strange shape isn't just unusual, it creates real problems. From natural disasters to national security, Chile has to work harder than most countries just to stay connected. In this video, we'll explore how Chile got its unusual shape, how it became a country trapped between ocean and mountains, and why that shape still creates real problems, and how is the country trying to fix them. Let's go back in time and unravel the story of the world's skinniest country. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe this channel. If you love stories about how geography shapes the world, this is the place for you. Tap subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Chile didn't start out this long and thin. It became that way through a mix of ambition, geography, and conflict. Centuries ago, before Chile even existed as a country, this narrow strip of land was home to various indigenous groups. In the north, there were Atacameños and Aymaras. In the south, the fierce and independent Mapuche resisted outside control for centuries. Then came the Spanish in the 1500s, searching for gold and empire. But colonizing Chile wasn't easy. Unlike Peru or Mexico, there was no wealthy empire to conquer. What the Spanish found instead was difficult terrain, mountains that split the land, deserts that never saw rain, and a fierce people who refused to surrender. The Spanish called it the end of the world, and for a while that's exactly what it felt like. After gaining independence from Spain in 1818, Chile was still a small country, mostly concentrated in the central region around modern-day Santiago and Valparaiso. But that quickly changed. In the 1800s, Chile began expanding aggressively in both directions. The northward push became especially important during the War of the Pacific, which lasted from 1879 to 1884. In that war, Chile fought against Peru and Bolivia, mainly over valuable nitrate-rich lands in the Atacama Desert. By the time the war was over, Chile had gained massive territories, and Bolivia had lost its entire coastline, becoming a landlocked country. This victory gave Chile control over vast mineral wealth and pushed its borders farther north, adding more than 500 kilometers to its length. Meanwhile, in the south, Chile moved into the remote region of Patagonia, claiming land that was also being eyed by Argentina. At times, the two countries came close to conflict, but through a series of negotiations and treaties, including the Boundary Treaty of 1881, Chile secured large parts of southern Patagonia and the Strait of Magellan, giving it control over key maritime routes. By the early 20th century, Chile had transformed into a long, narrow country, stretching over 4,200 kilometers from top to bottom, about the same length as the United States from coast to coast. Chile had succeeded in becoming one of the most territorially extended countries on Earth, but with that length came new problems. Chile isn't just long and thin, it's trapped, squeezed between two of the most powerful natural forces on Earth, the vast Pacific Ocean on one side and the towering Andes Mountains on the other. To the west, the ocean stretches endlessly, offering beautiful coastlines but no room to grow. To the east, the Andes rise like a massive wall, one of the highest mountain ranges in the world. These mountains aren't just tall. In some places, they reach heights of over 6,000 meters, forming a near impassable natural barrier. This geography turns Chile into what feels like a narrow hallway, a country that's stretched from north to south but barely wide enough to breathe. In its narrowest parts, Chile is less than 100 kilometers wide. That's thinner than some small US states. Now imagine trying to build a country on that. Roads that have to wind between mountains, railways that can't cut across flat land because there isn't any, and cities that can only grow in one direction, north or south. In the north, the challenges are just as extreme. Chile is home to the Atacama Desert, the driest desert in the world. Some parts haven't seen a single drop of rain in decades. It's so dry and lifeless that NASA has tested Mars rovers there, yet people still live and work in the Atacama, mining valuable resources like copper and lithium. In the far south, the landscape flips. There you find cold rain, wind, glaciers, and icy fjords that split the land into pieces. Roads are difficult to build, or sometimes impossible. You can't just drive from one end of Chile to the other. In fact, in the southern region of Aysén and Magallanes, the only way to reach some towns is by ferry, plane, or by passing through Argentina. Yes, even today, some Chileans must leave their country, cross a foreign border, and re-enter just to visit another part of Chile. This isn't just inconvenient, it's a strategic vulnerability. If a natural disaster strikes, like an earthquake earthquake or a flood, rescue operations can be delayed for hours, even days. If a geopolitical conflict ever arises, Chile's disconnected geography becomes a serious risk. Supplies might not reach where they're needed, people might be cut off entirely. So while Chile's geography makes it beautiful and unique, it also makes the country fragile, like a ribbon stretched too thin between two forces it can't control. But Chile hasn't given up. It's found creative ways to fight this isolation, which leads us to the next part of the story. Chile's biggest challenge has always been keeping the country connected from top to bottom. Over the decades, the government has tried building roads, highways and airports to solve this problem, but geography keeps fighting back. In some places, the terrain is so rugged that building a road takes years, only to be wiped out by floods or landslides the following season. The Carretera Austral, also known as Route 7 or Southern Highway, is one of the most ambitious projects ever built in Chile. It was started in the 1970s during the military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet, not just for development, but for national control. The government feared that the south, cut off from the rest of Chile, could become vulnerable to outside influence or even invasion. But building it wasn't easy. The road had to cut through thick forests, steep mountains, and raging rivers. Even today, after nearly 40 years, some parts of the highway are incomplete or can only be crossed by boats. Maintaining this highway is expensive, and natural disasters like earthquakes and landslides constantly damage parts of the road. Speaking of earthquakes, Chile is one of the most earthquake-prone countries in the world. It is located on the Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. It experiences thousands of small earthquakes every year, and even several massive ones. In 2010, an 8.8 magnitude quake struck near the city of Concepcion, killing hundreds and destroying thousands of buildings. That quake was so powerful, it literally shifted the Earth's axis and shortened the length of the day by a tiny fraction. When disasters strike, Chile's long shape makes rescue efforts difficult. It can take hours or even days for aid to reach affected areas, especially in the south. For example, a hospital in Santiago is no use to someone trapped in a mountain village 2,000 kilometers away. And this isn't just about disasters. Even in normal times, everyday life in Chile requires a massive effort just to stay connected. Flight times between the north and south can stretch over 5 hours. Cargo trucks often have to cross into Argentina and then come back, just to bypass impassable terrain. The further south you go, the harder life becomes, not because of people, but because of geography. And this geography also affects Chile's economy. Because the country is so stretched out, its population is unevenly distributed. Most Chileans live in the central region, around Santiago. In fact, nearly 40% of all Chileans live in or near Santiago. That's like if almost half of all Canadians lived in Toronto, or most Germans lived only in Berlin. It creates a country that's highly centralized, where nearly everything happens in one place. This concentration creates imbalance. Santiago and its surrounding areas have the best hospitals, universities, roads, airports and job markets. But go to the far north, to cities like Arica, or travel south to Punta Arenas, and you'll see a different picture. These areas often struggle with fewer jobs, less investment, and slower infrastructure development. If we talk about trade, Chile's economy relies heavily on exports, with more than 30% of its GDP coming from exports. It's one of the top producers of copper, lithium, wine, salmon, and fruit. But here's the problem. Moving goods in Chile is not simple. The long shape means transporting goods from mines or farms to ports can take days, adding to the cost and slowing down trade. Even though Chile has some of the most advanced ports in Latin America, like the port of Valparaiso and San Antonio, the country's extreme geography means exporters often face higher costs just to reach them. A company may need to combine road, rail, air, and sea transportation just to move a single product out of the country. This raises costs, delays shipments, and makes Chilean exports less competitive compared to countries with easier, flatter terrain. So while Chile is often praised as one of Latin America's most stable and successful economies, its geography constantly forces it to work harder and smarter just to stay competitive. But Chile isn't giving up. Instead, it's finding new ways to turn its geography from a challenge into a strength. Chile knows one thing for sure, that its shape isn't going to change. It can't flatten the Andes, it can't shift the Pacific Ocean, and it can't suddenly make the country wider. So instead of fighting geography, Chile is doing something smarter. it is adapting. The government has invested in high-speed internet and satellite connectivity to improve communication across the country. By 2022, over 90% of Chileans had access to the internet, and remote villages that were once isolated are now part of a digital network. In remote areas, they're using drone deliveries, solar-powered microgrids, and small regional airports to stay connected. But Chile knows it can't do everything alone. That's why it's also working with its neighbours, especially Argentina. In some parts of the south, it's actually faster, easier and cheaper to move goods through Argentina and then back into Chile than to ship them directly through Chilean territory. And in the far south, especially in Magallanes and Tierra del Fuego, Chile is investing in ferries, bridges and tunnels to better connect isolated towns, though many of these projects take years to complete due to the challenging terrain. At the same time, Chile is leaning into its strengths. It has built a reputation as one of the most stable and tech-savvy countries in Latin America. It's now a regional hub for startups, fintech companies, and green energy innovation. In 2023, Santiago was ranked among the top cities in Latin America for startup activity, thanks to government-backed incubators and investor-friendly policies. Chile is also becoming a leader in renewable energy with some of the world's most ambitious solar and wind farms. It's turning the natural limits of its geography into new industries, proving that a narrow, stretched-out country can still lead the way. So Chile's story is a reminder that geography is not just something you see on a map. It shapes politics, economy, culture, and even how people live day to day. And for Chile, that shape, a thin ribbon wrapped around the edge of a continent, tells a story that's still unfolding. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and check out more fascinating geography stories right here on our channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon in another eye-opening video. Take care.